Hello and welcome everyone, Lionheart here, and today I'm reviewing the MSI Z170A Gaming M5 motherboard. This is an 80X motherboard and supports Intel's new Skylight series of CPUs. Big thanks again to MSI for sending this motherboard over, but also a test kit of such, so that I can actually produce a full review and actually test this out, because I don't have access to DDR4 RAM or a Skylight CPU at the moment. MSI very kindly sent over an i5 6600K and a Crucial Ballistic 16 gig DDR4 RAM kit at 2666 megahertz. So I'll be using all of that combined with the motherboard to run some tests, see how it overclocks the i5 CPU, see what we can push that to, and I'll be popping that into my Bobcat rig. So let's jump on in and take a look at the motherboard to start with, take a look at the various connection options that it has, the various features that this motherboard specifically has, its design and all that goodness. Then we'll jump on into the BIOS and take a look at what MSI have done there with this latest iteration chipset for Intel Skylake CPUs. And then we'll wrap up the review. So before we take a look at the motherboard itself, let's very quickly see what comes in the box. Obviously, you've got the motherboard manual, pretty standard stuff. You have some other documentation and paperwork here, but very importantly, you have an MSI sticker, and I actually really like these stickers that they provide, the little dragon logo that they have on there, the Gaming G series. And it's actually smaller than the one that was in the last motherboard I reviewed, but I've got to admit, I like stickers when they come with things. Stickers are always good. You also get a door hanger, telling you that you're gaming and you're busy. You've got an actual thank you from MSI saying thank you for purchasing their product, which is nice. You have a DVD-ROM with all the drivers and what have you that you may well need if you don't want to download them once you've installed Windows and what have you. You have a quick installation guide as well, actually, which is quite useful. It goes through just installing your CPU, your RAM, all the basics for your computer hardware. And that's actually something that I really like, actually. They've got some stickers here. Now these are stickers that they suggest you wrap around your SATA cables, and you get a load of them as well. But these are stickers that go with your SATA cables, and you wrap them round, and then you can just literally write on them, on the little sticker tab bit, I don't know, boot disk or SSD. That's actually rather smart, and it'd be very useful for cable management, because I'm always forgetting at a quick glance, which SATA cable goes to what hard drive or what have you. That's actually quite useful. I like that they've included that. And they've included quite a lot of them as well. I think they've included 12 for you there, so that's rather useful. Thank you very much, MSI. And finally, you've got the I/O cover, the back plate there, which will go over all the various connections that you have out the back of the motherboard. So we'll take a look at that on the motherboard first. Okay, so let's take a look at that I/O panel on the motherboard. Take a look at all the various ports and connection options that you have there. First off, you have a PS2 port, and below that 2 USB 2.0 ports, a DVI-D port. Then you have one of the new USB 3.0 Gen 2 Type-C ports, and above that a USB 3.1 Gen 2 port, which will support speeds up to 10 gigabits per second. So the USB Type-C that you have there, I don't actually have any peripherals or cables that I can actually connect up there. I don't have anything Type-C at the moment, because this is the new USB port format that has been developed and will become more common over the next few years. I would expect to see more smartphones picking this up as well. In fact, if I upgrade my current phone, my OnePlus 1 to a OnePlus 2, which is not 3 in this case, that actually uses a USB Type-C port on the phone, so I could charge it out of the port here on the motherboard. But as of yet, I don't actually have anything that can connect to that. But it's good kind of forward-thinking, future-proofing that MSI have included that here. Next to that, you have Gen 1 USB 3.1 ports, 2 of them. Below that, an HDMI port, which will support 4K resolution from the onboard Intel GPU. Then you have your Ethernet adapter, 2 more USB 3.1 Gen 1 ports, and then you have your audio ports. And I've got a bit of a gripe here, because as you'll see when we take a look at the full motherboard, as we continue to look at the various features. While I love the red and black theme, I really think that they should have just ignored that for one moment when they were colouring in the port headers here for the audio adapters. Everyone's used to the green, pink, orange, black, and blue standard colours that you normally get on audio ports, and I would sort of tend to agree with you that probably keep those colours there, especially keeping the green one, because that's, for most people, if you don't have like a fancy multiple channel audio system, you definitely need that green port, and you probably need the microphone port as well if you're using a headset, if you're not using, say, front panel audio. The I/O shield that you do get with this motherboard, though, I mean, it does actually say on it which various audio ports are which on the shield there. And the one they do highlight, which they've actually made red rather than black, is what would traditionally be your audio in, your green port. It helps a little bit having it on the shield, but to be honest, I think most people, when you're plugging in multiple channel sound systems, will probably get it wrong the first time and then be like, oh, well, it's the other way around. So only a little gripe there. Colour-wise, probably keep with those nice bright colours so I know which cables I'm plugging in for my audio. But apart from that, those are all the connections and ports that you have on the I/O panel. So let's take a look at the rest of the board. Coming on down from those I/O ports, we actually have, again, I've seen this in other MSI motherboards, but a dedicated audio channel on the board for the built-in audio that you have. Now, onboard audio has come a long way since the sort of first motherboards incorporating it, and back in those days, you'd probably be best advised, if you wanted a superior audio experience, to get a dedicated sound card. Now, I'm sure some people could argue now that you still want to get a dedicated sound card if you want a premium audio experience, and fair point. But built-in sound has come a fair way now, and MSI's Audio Boost 3 technology that they use with this board is pretty good. Again, having that dedicated audio channel, which will actually light up red when it's all plugged in on in your PC, that will help reduce static and interference from other components on the board. So should give your analog audio, ideally, it probably will give you the best analog audio experience you can expect to get. MSI have also included a fair bit of software to further improve your audio experience with the M5 motherboard. That includes the Nahimic Audio Enhancer, which I last encountered with an MSI all-in-one PC review, which you can find down in the description. Basically, that software seeks to enhance your existing audio experience. It gives you loads of options to create virtual surround sound, which actually isn't that bad for software-based virtual surround. You've also got various different options to improve microphone quality through the Nahimic Audio Enhancer. So overall, I'm quite a fan of MSI's Audio Boost technology, and the inclusion of the Nahimic Audio Enhancer in this motherboard as a software package. That's a thumbs up from me. Moving on over to the PCIe slots, you actually see that the first two are steel plated, or have these little bits of steel around them. This is MSI's shield armor, or steel armor technology or feature, which is in place to help support the PCIe slots against any damage from heavy graphics cards, especially when you're traveling. Now, I guess that's probably more useful if you're competitive LAN player or something like that, and you're constantly taking your PC to and from events or something like that, or if you just happen to move your PC around. It's nice that they've got that reinforcement in there, because certainly with graphics cards at the moment being rather large, you know, something like the Titan X or the GTX 980 Ti, those are big cards, and you certainly wouldn't want a weak port. So having that steel armor around it helps improve stability and strengthens the port overall. So that's good. Next to the PCIe port, you'll actually see there's the M.2 ports, which can support SSD chips. Now, the first one is located to the just above the first PCIe slot, which is fine. It will plug in there nice and easily. The second one is actually located underneath the second PCIe slot, which again will fit in there fine and will fit in there. It won't interrupt a graphics card going in there. But something to bear in mind is that if it is sitting there, that does mean that the heat from your second graphics card will be going down on that M.2 slot, and whatever you've got plugged into it, if you do have something plugged in there. Now, obviously, depending on the cooling of your graphics card, that may be something just to keep an eye on, but it shouldn't cause too many problems. And having two M.2 slots really does help future-proof this board, giving you lots of memory expansion options in the future. So you've also got the CMOS battery there, and again you've got some PCI slots as well. Moving over that really nice heatsink with the dragon logo of MSI, again that red and black theme, very nice. You have a little LED display down here which isn't on at the moment, will be once I plug it all in, but that actually will read you your CPU temperature when your motherboard's all up and running and everything's running fine. But if you do experience any posting issues or any errors when you're trying to boot up your PC with the motherboard, there will be numbers displayed on those LEDs, and you can reference that against various codes in the motherboard manual to see what the issue is. So that helps you troubleshoot. That's pretty good. Obviously you've got all the headers for USBs down the side there, and actually they've included the USB 3.0 header. They've actually put it sideways, which should actually help a little bit with cable management. Often having it up, it gets in the way of some other cables. It's nice that they put that on its side. We've also got the main power connector to the motherboard there, and then above that we have the DDR4 RAM slots. You've got 4 of those. This is a dual channel motherboard, and again, like the audio, MSI have decided to incorporate a DDR4 boost feature and technology to this board, which should result in an increase in performance. So again, dedicated channels and connections from the RAM there. Very nice to see. Then on over to the new socket, the LGA1151, which obviously means for this motherboard it is not backwards compatible with any previous generation of Intel processor. This is for the future, for Intel's new Skylake CPUs. As I said, MSI have been kind enough to loan me an i5 6600K so I can test with this board, and I'll be popping it in that slot later. You've got 2 more little heat sinks around the top there. Again, keeping that red and black theme and keeping everything shielded where possible. But I think that is pretty much all the main features of the motherboard itself there, in terms of the various ports, connections and adapters that it may have. Okay, so we're taking a look at MSI's ClickBIOS 5 now, the BIOS that comes with the MSI Z170A M5 gaming motherboard. First off, design-wise and accessibility, it's very easy to use. You've got 2 different modes depending on how you like your layout. This is easy mode, so a simpler layout for those of you that maybe aren't as comfortable with accessing the BIOS and various settings that you can get here. This is where you'll want to come if you're interested in overclocking, changing boot priority and various other things, and obviously updating your BIOS as well. And you can do that very easily through the M-Flash feature. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. But we're just going to take a look at some of the features that the BIOS provides. I'll talk about overclocking because I've had a fair bit of time to test the i5 6600K that MSI provided in a test kit for me to have a play with. And I've been able to get a pretty reasonable overclock, as you can probably guess if you looked at the top of the screen. The stock clock for the i5 6600K is 3.5 GHz. I'm currently running a stable overclock of 4.6 GHz. So I'm pretty happy with that. And that's on an air cooler, no fancy water cooling. That's my next upgrade for this test rig PC in the future. But anyway, very accessible. I love the fact that they've included those 2 modes. To be honest, I actually prefer the advanced mode for everything, to be honest. I'm not going to lie, the big flaming lava dragon in the middle is quite nice to look at. Before we jump into the overclocking settings, and then we'll come and take a look at the other bits in a moment, you do have 2 little sort of buttons up here. XMP is for accessing profiles to overclock your RAM. MSI do provide some profiles for some RAM manufacturers and different types of RAM. Straight off the bat there with the XMP profiles, you can just select the right one for your RAM and it will automatically load up the overclock profile for your RAM, so that's quite useful. The other one is Game Boost, and you can access that via their software, which you can install on your desktop as well, their MSI Command Center, and you can boost through there as well if you want, but you can access this straight through the BIOS too. That will give you a predefined profiled overclock for your CPU, which will, you know, have been tested and should be stable just by hitting that button to on. But if you want to get a little bit more technical and delve into the depths of overclocking, you want to hit the OC settings. And not just MSI, but Intel have made it a lot easier for enthusiasts to overclock their CPUs with Skylight and the new Z170 chipset. For me, I've been tinkering around with various settings over the last few days for this review, but what I've left it on for the purpose of this review and to sort of demonstrate the overclocking here is a 4.6 gigahertz overclock, so an increase of 1.1 gigahertz over the stock speed of the i5 6600K from 3.5 to 4.6. And all I had to do to actually achieve this today was changing two settings, the CPU ratio and the ring ratio. I'll just put that to 46. You can actually overclock via the CPU base clock as well, but I've actually found stability-wise and just ease of access, changing the CPU ratio and ring ratio yielded the best overclocks for me. But you can have a tweak with the CPU base clock if you want, if you're a bit more of an advanced overclocker. But CPU ratio, ring ratio, 46, save and exit, reboot, came up perfectly fine. The only other setting that you would normally have to look at is the CPU core voltage, which I've actually left at automatic. I did manually overclock everything to 4.6, all the various settings that I would need to go through, but it's actually only three settings anyway: CPU ratio, ring ratio, and CPU core voltage. And I set that to a manual input of 1.41. The automatic one has it set to 1.416, so I was pretty much spot on there. You always want to try and get the minimum voltage for your CPU core when you're overclocking, as long as it's stable. So once you've kind of got a stable overclock, you can start trying to bring that core voltage down if you want, or you can leave it on auto, which for me has worked perfectly fine for the 4.6 gigahertz overclock. As I said, I did try tweaking it. I did try pushing up to 4.7, but that's kind of where I lost a bit of stability with the overclock. I am running only on an air cooler, no water cooling here, so I'd certainly want to look into a water cooling solution before I try pushing this any further. But a 1.1 gigahertz overclock, straight out of the box, straight onto the motherboard, very easy to do, and the motherboard's held it very nicely. Not had any issues. Run a couple of benchmarks. I've played some Total War Attila, no issues there as well. Depending obviously on what game you play, you'll see the difference in performance change on a game by game basis. But I certainly gained a few more FPS in Total War Attila with the increased CPU speed from stock 3.5 to the overclock that I have now, 4.6. So overall, I'm really impressed with MSI's overclocking in the BIOS. Very, very easy to do, especially if you know, you're not very technical when it comes to overclocking. If you're perhaps building your first PC, you want to get some extra performance out of your CPU. You can start off by just leaving the CPU voltage automatic and seeing if just changing the multipliers for CPU ratio and ring ratio will yield you the performance and a stable overclock. If not, you can come on in and tweak that core voltage yourself and work out where that needs to sit for a stable overclock. But really, very easy to overclock. As I said, come on in here today, set it to 46 on both, and that's all I needed to do. Very, very easy. So thumbs up there to MSI for very easy overclocking. In the settings, you have pretty standard options: system settings, advanced for more peripheral configurations, USB and what have you, integrated graphics configuration. You've got your boot here where you can change the boot priority. You can also do that up here as well. Security settings is where you can set an administrator password if you want to for the BIOS and everything else, and obviously save and exit to apply any changes. M-Flash, if we click on this, it will say, do we want to reboot and go into flash mode, which means that any BIOS you've downloaded to a USB stick can be plugged into your PC, and you can update the BIOS that way. I always stay well clear of any software-based BIOS updates. I've just not had good experiences with that. And normally updating the BIOS, sometimes you have to download specific USB tools to format your USB into a specific type and run a program and a profile to get it all set up. So normally, you know, that's often in the past actually put me off updating my BIOS when it would have helped me out in terms of reducing conflicts with my hardware and other bits and bobs. But M-Flash, very easy to use. I've mentioned that I believe when I covered their A88M motherboard. But yeah, M-Flash, very easy to use, no complaints there at all. Very easy to update the BIOS that way, and very easy to download BIOSes from MSI's website as well. You can load overclocking profiles through here if you want to, various save and load BIOS settings. Hardware monitor allows us to just take a look at the fan speeds. So we can turn it on or off smart fan mode to, as you see, gradually increase the speed of the fan as temperature increases. You've got the system fans as well that you'll have plugged in via the motherboard. So you've got fan control here. Take a look at your CPU and your system. Also got readings for the voltages across various parts of the motherboard, but that's pretty much it for a hardware monitor. Board Explorer allows us to take a look at the board and highlight various parts and just get a bit more information about what's in what. Very, very straightforward, easy to see what's where and what's plugged in to various parts of the board, so not much else to add there. So that essentially concludes a look at the Click BIOS 5 on the MSI Z170A M5 gaming motherboard. Just going to come on back to little old me and we'll wrap up this review. Okay, so time to wrap up and give you my final thoughts on the MSI Z170 M5 gaming motherboard. Overall, I'm really impressed by this motherboard. Retailing at £139.99 on Amazon UK and $196.99 on Amazon US. Feel free to shop around, you might be able to find that cheaper at other retailers. This is an enthusiast class board, built for gamers, built for enthusiasts that want to push their tech, their hardware further, you know, through overclocking. As I mentioned during the BIOS section of this review, I was able to overclock that i5 6600K very easily, very simply, and with minimal effort, really. Once I got it to that 4.6 gigahertz platform, that's about as far as I was happy to push it, and that's where I got kind of the most stable results. You can try pushing it further, obviously with a water-cooled solution, and tweaking that core voltage further if you want, and I'm sure other reviewers have done. But that seemed like a pretty reasonable overclock, a 1.1 gigahertz increase over the stock 3.5 gigahertz for the i5 there. But that Click BIOS, again, very easy to navigate everything, even for kind of tech newbies, those building their first PC for the first time. Very little settings you actually need to, you know, change to get a reasonable overclock. I mean, you could even go up to just 4.0 on the i5, but very easy to get 4.4, 4.5, 4.6. So I'm very impressed with the motherboard's ability there with the overclock. Very happy with the results, getting some extra frames for Total War Attila when combined with a GTX 960, and it ran fine in some of the other benchmarks I tested it with. Overall, this is a motherboard not just for now, but also for the future, including that Type-C USB port and those two M.2 SSD slots. Great they've included that, and obviously as that technology becomes more commonplace over the next few years, you'll be able to take full advantage of that with this motherboard. The software solutions and utilities that come bundled with this motherboard are actually pretty decent. Normally I'd sort of say you don't need to bother with the extra utilities that are sometimes bundled with motherboards, but actually MSI's for the most part are pretty useful. Their command center allows you to overclock directly from your desktop, although I'd recommend doing it in the click BIOS, to be honest. You've also got some reasonable fan control through there as well, which I do actually recommend you take a look at. It's pretty useful. You can set your own profiles and what have you there too. Would be nice if MSI consolidated all these various different programs and softwares that they have into one kind of package, I think, and one single program that you run. Maybe that's pushing it too far, but that's my only real kind of slight negative comment about the software. It's actually pretty useful and worth installing to see if you'll get some use out of it, rather than ignoring it completely. So at that $139.99 price point, this is a full-on enthusiast board, but at, I think, a pretty reasonable price. When you look at some of the boards that are a couple of £100 for what they're offering, this has a fair few of those features as well. I love that MSI have continued to try and get the most out of analog audio through their Audio Boost 3 technology, as well as keeping that analog audio an isolated channel on the motherboard to try and reduce any disruption to its frequencies. They've obviously taken that as well and created this RAM boost system as well, again isolating the channels for the RAM, so it should result in an increase in performance. Smart moves, makes a lot of sense, and you know, you as the consumer, as the user, gain the benefits from that. Overall, if you're looking to use Intel's Skylake CPU, then this is a very good motherboard to take a look at. Obviously, I haven't compared any other motherboards, so I'm not actually going to give this one a score today, because I think it's a bit unfair. I could compare this against other motherboards, but they'll be for different chip types, and almost in a way suit different purposes. Likewise, if you're looking at this motherboard, it's pretty much a yes or no sort of question. If you're not looking to use Intel's Skylake CPUs, this isn't the motherboard for you. It doesn't support any other CPU bar Intel's new Skylake, which isn't a bad thing. Intel's new Skylake CPUs overclock well, and are so far pretty reasonable. They're not offering as much performance increase as some of the previous generations of Intel's processors, but if you're building a new PC now, you should certainly have, and you want to get an Intel processor, you should certainly have Skylake in mind. So if you are looking for Skylake, this is a great board to take a look at. Check out those links in the description. Can't really say anything more than that. I hope you've enjoyed this review. Big thanks to MSI for loaning me the motherboard to take a look at and review, and also loaning me that test kit of the i5 6600K and DDR4 RAM. It would not have been possible to produce a review without that, without being able to get stuck in and actually turn everything on and see what I could do, especially overclocking. I'm really impressed with how easy that was to overclock the CPU. Anyway, don't forget to check out all my links in the description. Comment, rate and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Check out my affiliates and sponsors, XMG, Green Man Gaming and GT Omega Racing. Until next time, ciao for now.